What is up, guys? Tillerman back again with another video. This time I'm going to be going over my takes for the NFL season. Now, the season is coming to a close as of the time of my recording. It is the NFC Championship game, so I should have pretty much everything up to date with what I predicted, besides the Super Bowl and championship winners. This was recorded before the season started, so I'm going to see how I did. Let's get into it.
The first division is the AFC East.
Yep.
And coming in last place in the division, I have the New England Patriots.
Yep. Okay, that was right.
Finishing.
So the New England Patriots, they did finish last in the division. They were pretty lowly this year.
4-13.
I did
the
get
Patriots
them 4-13.
One of the toughest divisions in the league.
4-13 was a pretty good prediction for them. They finished at the bottom of the division with one of the best picks in the draft. I think it was about 4-13. So I'd call that a pretty good pick for them.
Being the AFC East, they also lost a lot of their good players, including Matt Judon. They will be starting Jacoby Brissett to start the season, and I don't think he's going to do all too well.
Jacoby Brissett was pretty bad this year.
Because they have no wide receivers and a mediocre running back at best. But Drake May is definitely underdeveloped, so I don't know how well he will play if he goes in.
Drake May was pretty good this year. I just thought him being a pretty young rookie was going to tank his season a little bit, but he played pretty well, and I think the Patriots are set up for some success in the years coming.
They do have a stud coming back from injury in Christian Gonzalez, which might be able to...
Gonzalez is he's a dog. I don't know what to say about it. He's going to be really good for them for many years still.
Slow the flow of points that's going to come in on their bad defense this year.
And yes, the Patriots did have one of the worst defenses of the year, but it wasn't the worst, I don't think.
I think that this team is going to have a hard time due to their division and their tough schedule, so I could see them losing as many games as 15. I do have their record at 4-13.
Yep, this scope right here is pretty good for them. 4-13, about where their record is. 7-10 was an okay guess, they played good in some games. 2-15, another good guess, but they won a few extra games at the end of the season. So overall, I think this was a pretty good pick.
And I don't have their ceiling too high at just being 7-10. This is going to be the worst team in the AFC, in my opinion.
No, they weren't really the worst team in the division, they were the worst team in the division, but they were not the best. No. They weren't really the best. No. They weren't really the worst team in the AFC, but they were still one of the lowest. I think. They might have been the worst. I'm not 100% sure. I think the Titans and the Browns were worse.
Finishing third in this division, I have the New York Jets. They also...
So the Jets, third in the division, was correct as well. The Jets really just did not have a great year with Aaron Rodgers. He did not do all too great through the year. They also traded Davante Adams. So I don't think their year was looking too great. I successfully predicted them to be pretty not amazing for what people were predicting them. So I'd call this a pretty good take right here as well.
Are in a tough division, and they do have a better team than the Patriots, but I do see them having some complications this season, mostly regarding Aaron Rodgers and the coaching.
This was true. Although Robert Saleh, I don't know if he was really the biggest problem in New York, but Aaron Rodgers definitely was one of their biggest problems this year.
Aaron Rodgers hasn't played many snaps in the last few years, and although they do have a better O-line this year, so he won't get sacked and break all of his bones.
It's pretty funny there, but I don't really think that their offensive line was much improved, really. I don't think Aaron Rodgers was really sacked all too many more times than he did the year before, but the improvements just did not help him, as it seems.
You will also have a good run game to go through, and Garrett Wilson, who I think will have a very productive year with a fully healthy Aaron Rodgers. I do think that their defense will continue to be good, even if Hassan Reddick does not sign with them. This is why.
Yeah, I don't even know what happened to Hassan Reddick. He just did not want to play for them, I guess. Probably ended up hurting them, too, on the defensive side. It'd be interesting to see where he goes after this year, if he decides to sign or not.
I gave them an 8-9 record for the year, but I could also see their record plummet.
8-9 was a pretty good choice. 8-9 is like pretty much where they were at. I think, was it like 7-10 maybe? They were not too great to be 12-5, that's for sure. But 5-12 seemed reasonable at the time for them, if just everything went wrong. Everything pretty much did go wrong, but they won a few extra games on top of it. Pretty good take, I'd say, for the Jets.
As low as 5-12, but I do think that they have a great team around them, so I could see them finishing with an astounding 12-5 record if all things go well. That I predict them will have.
I guess the 5-12 record seems
just barely.
More right. It's what they had.
The team that I have going second in the division this year is the Miami Dolphins.
I got that one correct as well. The Miami Dolphins did have a lot of injuries this year, but they still won a sizable amount of games and were pushing for a playoff spot at the end of the year. Tua getting hurt again did not really help them as well, as Tyler Huntley couldn't really do much for them. Tyreek Hill also kind of disappointed, as he's probably on his way out after this year.
This year, the Dolphins are going to be hoping for a little bit better of a playoff push, seeing as I feel like there's only a few more years left for them to be good because of Tyreek Hill and the money that they're going to have to be soaking up in the next.
Yeah, I don't really know if Tyreek Hill's still going to be there, though. So they might have some money left over.
Few years. I think they will battle with the Bills again for the division this year.
This take was not anywhere close. The Bills had the division wrapped up very early on, and the Dolphins had no chance of ever getting to their spot.
But in the end, playing in the cold is not good enough for them, and they will not beat the Bills out for the division. I also think that they have a very easy schedule for this year, having to not play any division wizards like the Bills, but I do have their record sitting at an 11-6.
So this was a bit high of a prediction for this year. 11-6, I think, would have been their record had Tua stayed healthy the whole year. But they ended up finishing at 8-9, which is where my low was at. Which, in theory, was pretty good, but I wasn't really expecting an 8-9. I thought the Dolphins were going to be another playoff team. They did not end up getting there. And 13-4 was kind of a crazy idea. It just didn't really happen.
And the lowest that I could see it being is probably 7-10 or 8-9. I'll say 8-9, but that's only if their players get hurt, I feel. But
hey, I mean, like I just said, if their players get hurt, which they definitely did, but it wasn't to the extent I was, talking about. But I digress.
I do see them going 13-4 if all things go right. Coming in first is the Buffalo Bills.
I did get the Bills correct at first place. I don't know if their record is correct, though. We'll see. But the Bills really had a great year this year. Josh Allen is a menace. Gonna win MVP. And I just thought they weren't going to be as good with their receivers, but it was still fine for them, I guess. And their defense held up as well. So I got the whole division sweep.
This year, Josh Allen will not have very many good wide receivers to throw to. Basically just Keon Coleman.
That wasn't even the correct thing, because Khalil Shakir did good. They traded for Amari Cooper. Keon Coleman was there, yeah, but he didn't really do a whole lot in his rookie season. Still not too bad, though.
But I feel like Keon Coleman will be very good this year for Josh. I do think Josh Allen will have a very up and down year with a lot of picks and a lot of touchdowns, especially.
I don't know if Josh Allen really threw too many picks. I don't think he did. I think he was pretty safe with the ball this year. That's probably the reason why they won so many games.
Running touchdowns. Unfortunately, the Bills did lose some good players to injury and trade this year. Even with all the injuries and trades, I do see their defense still remaining pretty good.
This is true. Their defense still remained pretty good, even with, all those injuries and trades that they did. So
do have a very tough schedule because of winning the division last year. I do see their record being at 11-6, but
11-6 is not the greatest for the Bills. So went 13-4 on the season. So overall, they overachieved in my opinion. I had them at 12-5 for the high. That wasn't even enough for them. 4-13 was criminal though. There was just no way they were gonna get that low with Josh Allen on their team. But a division sweep is a division sweep, whether or not the information is wrong or right. So I'd say I did pretty good for the AFC East.
Their low is very, very low at 4-13, and their high is only one game more at 12-5 for me. This is because I feel like they're going to overachieve this year with what they have.
This is true. I still feel like they overachieved with what they had, but not to the extent of the 4-13 that I had their low at.
The next division that I will talk about in this video is the AFC South. Finishing last, I have the Indianapolis Colts.
So the Colts, I put at last, unfortunately. Now, the Colts finished actually second in their division, which I didn't really see happening. I didn't really think Anthony Richardson was going to do all too well this year. But I just think that the Colts are always going to do at least mediocre every year. So I'll remember that for the next time I do this video.
The Indianapolis Colts are getting Anthony Richardson back after suffering an injury last year after 4 games. I do think he'll do solid this year with his good team that was kept mostly the same as last year.
And Anthony Richardson still did pretty okay, I would say, this year. Pretty underperforming for his potential, though. Did get benched for Joe Flacco at one point. But, I mean, it's not like he's did the greatest.
I do expect Anthony Richardson to have a lot of picks and touchdowns this year. Just
more on the interceptions part, but not the touchdowns. So I didn't really get that part correct.
By what he looked at in the preseason. He does have a young wide receiver room besides Michael Pittman, but I do think that...
And the wide receiver room wasn't really that good, though. Their rookie that they drafted was not terribly great. Alec Pierce, I think they have. Not really a big fan of the Colts, so I don't really remember all their receivers' names, but they really didn't do too great for receiving. Michael Pittman kind of fell off this year.
They will be competitive this year, and Jonathan Taylor will lead them to many wins, possibly. I do think...
And Jonathan Taylor really was the only bright spot on the offense. The defense was okay, but JT was really churning it out, trying to get the Colts to the playoffs, and they just could not.
Their team is very solid. Their division is pretty competitive. A lot of the teams should be better this year.
Not so much. Their division was competitive, not really either as well, because it was really just a wrap for the Texans, and the other two teams didn't really do so hot.
Defense looks good, but they do have problems at cornerback. I do see them going 7-10 this year, but I think
7-10 is the last in the division is kind of crazy. I don't know why I did that, but the Colts ended up finishing 8-9, so the record wasn't too far off. So it wasn't that horrible. It's just that I had other teams ahead of them.
Their ceiling is really high at 12-5. But if Anthony Richardson disappoints this year, I could see them going 5-12 at the least.
I mean, Anthony Richardson did kind of do great for them, but they still won a lot of games somehow, so good on them.
Coming in third place, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Another bad take here. Had the Jaguars below the Titans. I was just really high on the Titans this year. I thought they were going to do really good. But the Jaguars, they had some problems, especially early in the season. Trevor Lawrence hurt as well, so there wasn't many bright spots with the team this year. Pretty much just Brian Thomas.
Had a less than ideal year last year, but I think they're probably going to do better this year.
They didn't really do much better. They didn't do better at all, actually, but I think it was just a mix of bad coaching, not too many good players, and quarterback injuries and bad quarterback play that really just marked their season down for disappointment.
But they did lose some players like Calvin Ridley. They did pick up Brian Thomas, who has looked good in preseason.
And he looked good in the regular season, too. So he's a demon.
I do think they're going to be a great team this year, but that wide receiver room might disappoint just a little bit.
Besides Brian Thomas, yeah, I would say, though, that they pretty much disappointed. Gabe Davis really didn't do anything, so yeah, I'd say that was pretty correct.
The team looks good. The coaching, I think, will be bad this year. I think
And that was true. Doug Peterson really did not do their team any favors, leading to him getting cut.
Peterson is not going to do so hot this year. And it's going to have to be all in on Trevor, I feel, for this year, if their team is good. I do see him doing okay. I see them going 8-9 for their record, but
8-9 for the record is all right. I mean, not really, because they only won 4 games, but 13-4 for the high is kind of crazy. There was just no way they were getting there, even if Trevor Lawrence just became the best quarterback. 6-11 of the low is still not even enough to describe how bad the Jaguars were, so I got this one pretty bad.
If Trevor Lawrence plays good, I could see them going 13-4. And if everything goes wrong, I see them going 6-11.
I mean, most everything did go wrong, and they still did worse than that, so.
Coming in second place, I have the Tennessee Titans.
Yep, I'm ashamed of this one. Tennessee Titans going second in the division. There was just no way, man. Will Levis is not good. Calvin Ridley was okay. Tony Pollard was okay. L'Jarius Sneed wasn't great. Got hurt. Yeah, it was just not a great year for the Titans. Didn't have much besides, I guess, a little bit of an alright defense. They're going to need to do some drastic things to make their team good, especially find a good quarterback. That's why I'm thinking they might try and go for a Sam Darnold or something like that. Unless they want to go quarterback with the first pick.
The Titans had many additions in the offseason, including Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, and Tyler Boyd.
Tyler Boyd really didn't do anything. It was just Tony Pollard did some nice rushing, and Calvin Ridley was okay in the passing game.
And they also had L'Jarius Sneed to hopefully make their cornerback room really good this year.
He didn't really accomplish much at the position.
They also drafted T'Vondre Sweat to pair with Jeffrey Simmons on the defensive line.
Sweat was okay, but kind of disappointing for how good I thought he was going to do. But Jeffrey Simmons is still a dog, so they didn't really need to pick him up, I don't think. We'll see.
Which I think will be monstrous this year. Their O-line should be better this year because of J.C. Latham, which they picked in the first.
Their O-line was not better this year. J.C. Latham was okay, maybe mediocre this year for them, but their O-line really struggled, I feel, unless it was really just Will Levis that was causing problems.
Round, and it's going to all be on Will Levis this year.
And the mailman, he disappointed big. He threw way too many bad picks, had way too many bad throws for their team to ever be good. And now they're sitting with one of the top picks, might even be the first pick. I don't remember the pick order. But they are probably going to remove Will Levis from the team unless they want to run it back with him one more time. I still think Will Levis can be good. He has the talent. his headspace is just not where it needs to be.
Do you think D Hop will be injured to start the year?
It didn't really matter with DeAndre Hopkins. They ended up trading him to the Chiefs, so it didn't really matter for them that he was hurt. Put up some okay numbers with Tennessee and some okay with the Chiefs, but trading him away, the Titans really just did not have a chance this year.
But I think that's not going to hinder them too much. Tyler Boyd's just going to have to play a bigger role.
Tyler Boyd did not play a role at all, so I was pretty wrong there.
I see them going 9-8 this year.
9-8 with a playoff spot is kind of crazy if you look at how bad they did. 3-14 is what they had. I had them at the low as well for the 3-14, but it was really all Will Levis's fault. 11-6 is crazy work, but I don't know. I just really thought the additions that they made in the offseason was going to be very helpful for them, but it was not.
But they could go as high as 11-6 in my opinion. But if all these additions don't mesh and Will Levis is bad, I could see them going 3-14. In first place in the division, I have the Houston Texans.
We got this one right with the division records. Texans finished first. They had a 10-7 record. So we got that one right. That was a good call by me, but I think I glazed them a little bit too much, especially CJ Stroud.
Should be much improved this year because they were young last year. They're getting Tank Dell back, and they picked up...
Unfortunately, with Tank Dell, he did not last the whole season once again. Prayers up for him. That was a bad injury that he suffered. Just hoping he gets back to how good he was as a rookie.
Stephon Diggs in the offseason, so their wide receiver room is...
Stephon Diggs was a good piece while he was there. He got hurt as well. The Texans receivers kind of were limited throughout the year, especially with injuries. So that was definitely a big problem, I feel, for CJ Stroud.
Stacked, also with Nico Collins. They did also pick up Joe Mixon at running back.
Joe Mixon was a beast for the Texans. Made the Pro Bowl. He was all around just really good. He was the only reason the Texans won games, it felt like at times. So I think that was a pretty A+ addition for the Texans.
Which possibly could be an improvement, but I'm not so...
It was definitely a big improvement.
Sure. CJ Stroud should improve more this year. And
CJ Stroud kind of was running on rookie stuff. This year he kind of regressed, it felt like. But I think he's still good, and we'll see what happens for them next year.
Defense is still really young, meaning it should be really good. The O-line was a problem last year, but it should be better this year because of a few transactions that they made. They have a surprisingly easy schedule for winning the division last year.
Yeah, when I looked at their schedule, they didn't really have too many hard games, especially in their division and their conference. It just felt like they were playing all the lowly teams, it felt. But they still didn't do as great as I thought.
So I do think they have a favorable chance to have a great record again. I have them going 12-5, but if everything works out well...
12-5 record is... not too far away from 10-7. It could be better though. Had it towards the lower end with the record at 8-9. Was a lot closer. 15-2 is kind of out of their picture, I guess.
And the offense is clicking, and the defense plays really well. I could see them going 15-2. But if everything does not click, CJ Stroud does not progress more, and maybe they're injury prone this year, I could see them going 8-9.
Pretty much accurate to what happened to them in real life. They just won an extra game on top of it. All in all, pretty good takes on the Texans.
Next is the AFC West, with a lot of teams that are not great besides the Chiefs.
And yet, 3 of them made the playoffs. So, that was not good off the bat.
Coming in last, I have the Los Angeles Chargers.
This one kind of hurts. I don't know. Los Angeles Chargers, I was really not into Herbert with no receivers pretty much. They just surprised me, and good on them. Lad McConkey is a demon, and he's going to be good for the next many years, I feel.
Shipped off basically their whole offense, losing Austin Eckler and both of their wide receivers, or besides Keenan Allen, I believe. Oh no, yeah, they got rid of Keenan Allen. But they did pick up Lad McConkey and Brendan Rice in the draft, which
Brendan Rice didn't do much. Lad McConkey did do good work, though.
could be good for this year. They did bring in Harbaugh to come in, but he is looking to use running backs from the Ravens, Gus Edwards and the other one.
Yeah, both Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins had pretty good seasons for the Chargers. Harbaugh was a great coach, and we'll see if they can repeat it next year.
Which should work in theory, but their offensive line isn't that good. Their defense...
Their offensive line wasn't really their problem. I felt they had Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt. They were really good for Herbert in the season.
should be all right this year because they still have many good players like Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. But this year,
sorry about that one on the screen.
I do not see them having a very good year. I see them being at 5-12. If the skill
5-12 is kind of crazy. 10-7 is a lot closer to what their record was, but it's still 11-6 for the Chargers. Honestly, it's just good on Herbert and McConkey. They really pulled it through for them, and the defense is really great. But this was far too low, so I'm kind of embarrassed by this one.
players that they drafted are great, and Harbaugh is the next best coach. I could see them going 10-7. But a more likely outcome, possibly, is that only Herbert is the good thing out of the year, and I see them going 3-14. Coming in at third in the division is the Las Vegas Raiders.
The Raiders were not great. They had 4-13 record, and they did not play better than the Chargers ever. Did have that one win against the Ravens early on, though. That was kind of surprising. The Raiders had a lot of problems, especially on the offensive side. Gardner Minshew was not good. Aiden O'Connell was not great. Desmond Ridder was not great either. So they all around had a bad year, and they fired their coach.
You have a new coach this year and a new quarterback to throw to Devontae Adams, which is their best player.
When you trade off your best player, you know something's been going wrong in the season. So
unlikely. Gardner Minshew will be throwing to him, and that's basically their whole offense, seeing as they don't have Josh Jacobs anymore. But the defense should be pretty good this year with Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins.
Christian Wilkins didn't really do a whole lot for them, I felt. Max Crosby was okay when he was there. Didn't give me DPOY type of stats, though. So Raiders were not great.
Should be a great team. They do have a young tight end duo in Michael Myers and Brock Bowers, but I feel like the defense is going to be their strong suit this year.
Brock Bowers was really good this year. Michael Myers, he's probably going to get shipped off in a trade somewhere or just leave entirely. But Brock Bowers is great. Probably going to be the cornerstone of their offense for the next few years. Maybe if they draft a quarterback or trade for someone like Sam Darnold.
I have them going 6-11 on the year just because I don't know if the coach is going to work out.
6-11 is kind of close to what the record was at 4-13. That was where they had their low at, which is pretty accurate. I'll probably explain the video coming right up exactly why it went wrong, because that's how it's usually been in this video.
Same with the quarterback, but I could very well see them going probably like 9-8 if everything works well. But if it does not, I see them going probably 4-13. Coming
Okay, I didn't really explain it.
second in the division, I have the Denver Broncos. I think
Of course, I picked the Broncos second in the division. It wasn't a horrible pick. Obviously, everyone knew that the Chiefs were going to be winning the division. The Broncos had a great year at 10-7, got the 7th seed. Bo Nix was pretty good. Sean Payton led a pretty good offense for them. Broncos kind of surprised me this year, but their team is looking pretty good and should be built up through the next few years if Bo Nix plays well.
This is going to look really good this year, and he'll be throwing to Cortland Sutton for most of his passes, but he could also see a bigger workload going to Marvin Mims,
Yeah, Marvin Mims did get a better workload at the end of the year. I think he's going to be developing into a great wide receiver for that team. And yeah, pretty much was those two getting the balls. They had a few other stars emerging kind of for their team, but all in all, it was basically those two receivers.
really like as well out of Denver. They do have a middling running back room, but they do have many options there.
Yeah, the running back room wasn't really great with their options. Who was it? Yeah.
Defense should be about as good as it usually is, although they did lose some of their better players.
The defense was really good for Denver for the most part of the year. They were really good in the backfield, really good up front, got many sacks, and Pat Surtain was putting up Defensive Player of the Year numbers in the backfield. Riley Moss was all right as well back there.
They do have a very easy schedule this year, but I do have them predicted to barely miss the playoffs here, going 8-9.
Instead, they barely made the playoffs at 10-7. That's where I have their high at, which makes sense. I think this was a really good record prediction for the Broncos.
If everything works correctly, I don't see them winning too many more games, maybe 10-7, because this record that I have them at is a pretty far-fetched record, but I think it's possible. But if Bo Nix is the problem here and Sean Payton is bad, I could see them going 3-14.
Yeah, with the Broncos, everyone was already counting them out at the end of the year, saying they had one of the worst rosters. But I just really thought that they had a chance, at least, to make the playoffs possibly. And what do you know? They decided to play pretty good.
Coming in first in the division is obviously the Kansas City Chiefs. They do have some troubling players this year.
That didn't really amount to anything for this year. Rashid Rice, the big name that comes to mind, didn't really get affected by it this year. He got hurt as well. They had a lot of other players with some legal troubles or such. Harrison Butker, namely. But the Chiefs team is good. Might win the Super Bowl. That's just how it is.
Rashid Rice. They do also have a very tough schedule. Mahomes and Kelsey are going to be leading this team, mostly the offense. I do believe they'll have a tough time this year, but I think they're going to come back strong at the end of the year. They did lose L'Jarius Sneed on defense, but I do believe that their defense should still be good with Chris Jones back there. And I do believe that they are in one of the weakest divisions because of the Chargers and the Raiders.
They were actually in one of the strongest divisions, really, because they had a 7th seed and a 5th seed, and they were the 1 seed.
And the Broncos are mostly predicted to be bad this year, but I do have them only finishing at 10-7. But it's
in retrospect, this is kind of looks bad, but that's just because I thought with the hard schedule and all the player troubles and everything that's happened to them in the off season, I just really thought they would struggle at the end of the year like they usually do. But instead, they turned it up and went 15 games. 14-3 is the high, isn't great. I would call this not great, but it's the Chiefs. They were going to make the playoffs anyways, but they got the 1st seed, so what are you going to do about it?
Very possible that they're still very, very good, going 14-3 in my prediction, but I could see them also going 7-10 if things don't work out in Kansas City. Finishing out the AFC, we have the AFC North. Coming in last, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Now, with the Steelers, I really didn't think that their quarterbacks were going to be doing too well this year. Mike Tomlin's a great coach, I know, but it just didn't feel right to me.
I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have a really good defense, and they also added Patrick Queen and a few quarterbacks to their teams, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, although I don't think their talent is very good.
And it's probably still that way. Their talent isn't, amazing. I feel like they overachieved, still looking at it right now, at the 6th seed that they got.
There, Mike Tomlin usually brings them to a 9-8 record, at least. I do think with the record that I'm giving them, this might be his last year. A little controversial, I feel. It's just their team isn't all too good besides the defense. Their offense has Najee Harris and George Pickens, I guess, for skill players. They are in a very tough division, so I do see them going 6-11.
Now, 6-11 doesn't look great here, but I stand by my word. They shouldn't have been as good as they were, especially at the end of the season where they floundered to the end and just lost in the playoffs.
But they could go around 11-6 or 5-12 at the low end. Coming in third for me is the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson just isn't a very good quarterback anymore.
Now, the Browns, they had a lot of problems this year. They had multitude of bad quarterback play. Everyone was not playing well. The defense was pretty middling. Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett did well, I guess. They also had Jerry Jeudy emerge as their number one target, so I suppose that's pretty good for them. They got a lot of problems to fix in the next few years. We might not be able to see the Cleveland Browns in the playoffs for the next 5+ years at this point.
He always has been since he got traded. The Browns do have a very good defense, though, this year, and they do have Nick Chubb coming back this season.
Unfortunately, Nick Chubb does not look to be the same as his usual self, unfortunately, so that could be a problem for the Browns in the upcoming seasons.
And, well, that might be good for them, might be bad. They do have a really tough schedule this year, but they still did good last year despite their injuries at their good positions. But this year I do see them going 8-9 just because I feel Deshaun Watson's going to play the full year and be...
8-9 was not great. Deshaun Watson definitely did not play the full year. They finished at 3-14, so this is not a great one right here. I'm embarrassed by this one as well. I just was really hyped by the the coach play of this team. So Stefanski was just not it for them.
Bad, but they could do about as good as last year and go about 12-5. But I could also see them going around 6-11 with only their good defense or maybe some injuries to their team. Coming in at second in their division is the Baltimore Ravens. I think they have a...
Now, the Ravens pick here at second is kind of crazy, but I just really was thinking the Bengals, it was going to be their year, at least, to get far in the playoffs again because of Joe Burrow coming back. I just didn't really think the Ravens were going to be all too good. But now looking at it here in the future, I think I really missed the mark on this one.
Really great team. They did really well last year, losing to the Chiefs. I think Zay Flowers is actually a really good receiver. And they also picked up Derrick Henry in the offseason to hopefully shore up their offense a little bit. They also did lose Patrick Queen, though, making their defense a bit worse. Their O-line also got slightly worse. They do have a really hard schedule as well this year. And they did add Nate Wiggins in the secondary, hopefully making them better. I do think that they're still going to do really good this year, but I feel that the Bengals have a good chance of beating them for the division. I have them going 12-5, but they could go as...
I got the record actually correct on this one. They did go 12-5. I just didn't get the right order in the division correct. I still think this wasn't, a horrible pick, but the way I'm explaining it just makes it sound worse than it actually was. But good pick, I'd say.
Good as 14-3 for me and 9-8 on the low end. First is the Cincinnati Bengals. They did lose a few good players.
Now, the Bengals would have done a lot better this year had it just not been a horrible defense for them. Joe Burrow was really, really good. Jamar Chase was really, really good. Trey Hendrickson even was really, really good. So I could still see this team making a deep run in the playoffs again next year as well, as long as they shore up the defense.
Such as Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd, but they did add a few things that could make them better, like Geno Stone. Their O-line is alright. Their defense should be okay as well.
Well, their defense was definitely the problem for them, so it was definitely not good.
Jamar Chase does want an expensive contract, so that could influence their record this year, possibly. I think a healthy Joe Burrow this year goes ballistic and gets some great stats this year. I also have them going 12-5 on the year with
12-5 was a bit of a reach on the records. They're more of on the low end. They had a 9-8 record this year. They were just an anomaly of a team. So there was nothing really I could have done in the picks wise. Unfortunately, I didn't get them right in the records or the standings. So it's still a bad pick, but I wouldn't say it's really my fault entirely.
14-3 is their high end, just like the Ravens. But I do see that their low could be much lower as the Ravens because they have a bit more of an if factor to them. So I have them at the low of 6-11. Now I'm going to move on to the NFC teams. Starting with the NFC East, I have the Giants going last in the division.
This is correct. The Giants had a terrible year and shipped off Daniel Jones. They were just tanking to try and get a better pick. They tanked not well enough, so they still didn't end up with one of the best picks, but they still had a very bad record at the end of the day.
Daniel Jones is pretty bad. I would assume most people would know that. Malik Neighbors is going to be great, I feel.
Malik Neighbors made it to Pro Bowl in his first year, and he's looking really, really good. The Giants might have a cornerstone piece of their offense again, just like they had with Saquon. Let's hope it doesn't come to them trading away their best player once again.
But that's about where the good things end. They have an okay defense, I suppose, even though they lost Xavier McKinney. The biggest problem for them is that they have no Saquon Barkley anymore, and it's kind of a problem for them. I see them going 4-13 this year.
Pretty close to what their actual record was. Giants went 3-14 on the year, so I think I got this one pretty spot on. So I'd say a good pick. Good way to start out the NFC.
With a high of 7-10 possibly. I could also see them going as low as 2-15 with their terrible roster. Going third in the division, I have the Washington Commanders. They did pick up Jaden Daniels in the draft with the second pick, who I think looks pretty good.
He looked better than good. Jaden Daniels played like an offensive rookie of the year caliber player. And he's looking to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC at this point after year one.
But he might be a Josh Allen type quarterback in my opinion. Throwing interceptions possibly and running a lot. Besides Terry McLaurin, they don't have the best wide receiver room, especially with Jahan Dotson gone. They did pick up Austin Eckler to go with Brian Robinson, so they'll have a good 1-2 punch at running back, at least. Their O-line isn't very good, along with their deep.
Their O-line actually played very well, surprisingly. There wasn't too many weaknesses there, and Jaden Daniels actually had a lot of time to throw during the season.
Defense, but it should improve. I have Jaden Daniels doing really good this year. I think his name might come up later in the predictions for winners, possibly. But I have their team going 9-8 this year with a high of 11-6.
So 9-8 as a record was not great. Commanders finished 12-5, getting the 6th seed in the conference. The 11-6 is the high. Wasn't really enough to get them there. Jaden Daniels really just was really, really great this year. I just thought that they weren't ready for a playoff push quite yet at 9-8, but they were certainly ready, beating the Lions in the first round, or not first round, the second round of the playoffs. So they got a lot in their future to come.
Jaden Daniels is bad or gets hurt, which is a high possibility. I could see them going 4-13. Coming in at second in the division, I have the Dallas Cowboys.
Dallas Cowboys pretty much collapsed in the middle and the start of the year. Cowboys were the third seed, whereas the Commanders were the second in the division. The Cowboys are really hurting right now, and they might not be great for another few years if they don't get things right. Even though they have a lot of good players like Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, and Dak Prescott, I suppose. But he's very injury prone, so we'll see what happens there in Dallas.
They don't really want to bring Dak Prescott back this year, but
he got extended, so good on him.
He's an alright quarterback at that. CeeDee Lamb got paid and is pretty good. Their defense still should be alright, even though they lost Stephon Gilmore and their another cornerback, Deron Bland. The O-line did get worse, I believe. They also have a really tough schedule this year. And traditionally, they haven't been able to beat good teams lately. So I do see them finishing at 11-6, since they still usually...
Not a great prediction here. The Cowboys did finish 7-10, even though half the year they were starting a backup level quarterback. So, I mean, what could have really happened with Dak Prescott? I'd still say it's not a great take here, but it's not the worst. So, well, you keep going.
Do pretty good in the season, but they could also go 13-4 if this is their year, and I could also see them going around 8-9 as a low. I have the Philadelphia Eagles finishing first in their division this year. I think they picked up some great pieces in the draft and in the offseason. They
did pick up some good pieces. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, pretty good. Seriously. But the Eagles were really good this year. There's a reason why they're going to the Super Bowl again. They're just going, and they have a great team. So they might be good for the next few years to come as well.
2 cornerbacks in the draft, and they also picked up Saquon Barkley from the Giants, which is pretty lethal with their good O-line.
And Saquon was really lethal. Saquon almost broke the rushing record with the Eagles here, and he was a pivotal piece to their offense, making them virtually unstoppable at every level almost.
Secondary was their problem last year, so they did address it with those cornerbacks. They do have a few problems they need to address, but I think this is a really good team. I just don't know about the coaching. It's a very young team with Jalen Hurts as well. I see them going 12-5 this year, winning the division. I could also...
Not a horrible take here. Eagles went 14-3, and I had 13-4 as the high, so it was pretty close in the record predictions. So I'd say this is a pretty good take, and all in all, not too terrible a division.
See them going around 13-4 for their high. Not much different, just because I already have them at a pretty high record, and I could see them going as low as 8-9 this year. Moving on to the NFC South, I have finishing last in the division, the New Orleans Saints.
Yep, got this one right. The Saints were last in their division, so I just knew there was going to be lots of problems in New Orleans, and they might have a lot of problems for the next few years to come because their team is just slowly regressing each and every year.
The Saints do not have a very good team this year. I also think their coach is horrible.
Yep, and their coach did get fired midway through the year, so it was a good take there.
Carr is their quarterback, which is probably subpar. Alvin Kamara is aging, but probably their best player. Do have a very competitive...
This is pretty true. Kamara was really the only bright spot on their offense. So they're going to have a lot of problems to address in the draft in the next few years.
Division, though, which could aid in them winning more games. Their defense is getting older and worse. it's really Chris Olave for them as well on offense. There's not much to say about them. I just don't think they're going to do so well this year. I'm going to give them a record of 5-12.
So I got this one spot on. The Saints went 5-12, so this is a really good start to this division.
They could go around 9-8, maybe winning the division if they get a little lucky in some of these games, or if the coaching improves. I could also see them losing a few more games and going 3-14 on the year. Coming in third in division, I kind of have a hot take. I do have the Atlanta Falcons.
So the hot take really wasn't correct. The Falcons kind of disappointed this year. Kirk Cousins was not great at all. Ended up starting Michael Penix Jr. for the last few weeks, and the Falcons might have some problems to work out in the next few years.
I don't think that their team is going to be necessarily horrible. I just think that the situation that they put them in isn't the greatest for their first year. They did bring in Kirk Cousins for their quarterback job, but he just came off of a bad injury, so he might not be the greatest to have out there. Their O-line is good, though, so that might aid in them being okay there in that way. They do also have Bijan Robinson as their running back, which is really good for them.
Bijan was really, really good this year. He made the Pro Bowl. He's one of the best running backs in the league, and I think it's going to be that way for the many few years coming. He's just very dominant in what he does.
They do have some good receiving options in Kyle Pitts and Drake London, so I don't...
Kyle Pitts, he needs to get traded, bro. He sucks. Get him out of Atlanta.
I think they're going to have too many problems on offense, but their defense also isn't that horrible. You know, it's got A.J. Terrell and the one Broncos cornerback, or safety, I mean.
Justin Simmons and A.J. Terrell really were not too bad in the cornerback department. So.
But yes, they did give Kirk Cousins a lot of money. They also got a new coach. I don't think he's going to be too good the first year. This is all mostly speculation because I think they could also be really, really good. I do have them at 7-10, but they think
7-10 record is pretty close to what they had. They had an 8-9 record. I think the record-wise shows a better picture than what it actually predicted them for the year. It would have been better if I actually had them in the right record or the right part of the division. They should have been the third seed. Here they're actually supposed to be the second. So not an amazing pick here.
It could also be as good as 12-5. I do have 5-12 as their low, but I don't think they're going to hit anything that low. So I do have the Panthers finishing second in the division. Bryce Young should have a better...
So the Panthers had a lot of problems this year again. Bryce Young was not great for the first half of the year. They ended up benching him, but then he came back. Bryce Young did look a lot better at the end of the year, but still, I don't know if he's still going to work out. We'll see, but second in the division was not quite correct here. We'll see next year on them, though.
Better year this year. The coaching should also be better. They get Deontay Johnson in a trade, which should help their receiving room as well.
Deontay Johnson didn't do anything. He just got traded back and forth between the Texans and the Ravens after they let him go, so he really didn't do much for them.
Along with Xavier Legette back there. I do think they'll do better than last year, and their defense actually isn't too horrible. They did lose Brian Burns, which is not great for them. I think they also lost like Frankie Louvu or something. They're in a competitive division, so that could help them out with some games. They did also bring in a rookie running back. I don't know his name. I think it's Jonathan Brooks, but I think he's going to be pretty good. But yeah, I think they're going to have a better...
Jonathan Brooks got re-injured again, so it doesn't look like he's going to be the future of Carolina. It looks like it's going to be Chuba Hubbard after he signed his extension. Didn't even know who that was before the season started, but good on him, I suppose.
Here, I would also predict them to be 7-10, same as the...
7-10 isn't too far off. 5-12 is what they actually ended up with, so not a horrible take here. I wish I would have just switched the Falcons and the Panthers around, and I think it would have been really good.
Falcons, but I do not see their high being as high, just at 9-8. and they could also revert back to old ways, going 3-14. I have the Buccaneers winning the division again. They did lose Canala.
Yep, the Buccaneers did win the division again. They weren't entirely very good, though. I mean, they did get the third seed in the division, so I guess it can't be that bad. Their team as a whole was pretty good. Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans were really heating up at the end of the year as well.
Their quarterback coach to a different team, so that could be bad for Baker Mayfield, who had a resurgence last year.
Baker Mayfield played as well or even better than he did the year before, so I think he's going to be a cornerstone for the Buccaneers for a while.
Rest of the team is mostly the same as last year. Did sign back Mike Evans, which is good for them. Their defense should be pretty good. Running game might be a problem with Rachaad White.
Rachaad White really didn't do anything for them. It was actually Bucky Irving that rushed it onto the scene and did really good for them. Their team could be just as good or maybe even better next year as well. We'll see.
Their schedule is a bit weird as they have a lot of very easy games, but also a lot of very hard games. So that's why I gave them a middling record at 9-8, winning the division.
Pretty close. 10-7 was what they actually finished with, so I really like this pick here at 9-8. I do see the 12-5 that they could have had. They were really heating up and beating really good teams at some times. 5-12, I don't know about that though. Pretty good pick for me though.
Could also see them going as high as 12-5 though if Baker increases his game even more. But 5-12 at their low seems to make more sense to me anyways. Now to the NFC West. Coming in last, I do have the Seattle Seahawks.
Having the Seattle Seahawks at the last place in the division isn't quite correct. They actually finished the third in the division. I just wasn't really expecting the Niners to fall off so hard. And the Arizona Cardinals, I had a lot of hype for them, but they just disappointed at the end of the year.
I do think the Seahawks could have a good chance to actually be really good this year, but I'm not really believing in Geno Smith this year, as he was not.
Geno Smith was okay, but I think the Seahawks need to move on and try something else over there, since they did finish with a tied record for the division, but it didn't even matter in the end.
Not too good last year. They do have a really good wide receiver room, though, and a very good running back.
Lockett and DK Metcalf are kind of regressing, but Jackson Smith-Njigba really bursted onto the scene at the end of the year, and he's looked really good, even making it to the Pro Bowl.
Well, the receiving room of DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett are all very good. They're also a pretty young team. Their defense is pretty good this year. They got Byron Murphy in the draft. I think Dexter Lawrence as well on that line is pretty good. Do have a pretty tough division this year and a pretty tough schedule at that. I do think that it could be pretty bad this year, especially with their bad O-line that they usually have. But simply due to their good offensive pieces, I will give them a 6-11 record.
6-11, this is not a great pick. 10-7 at the high end would have been their actual record, but I'm not really proud of this pick. I just really thought the Seahawks were going to fall off because Geno Smith, but they still won a good amount of games, so we'll see what happens with them next year.
Going as high as 10-7 and as low as 4-13. Finishing third in the division, I do have the Arizona Cardinals.
This was correct. The Cardinals did finish third in the division, but I'm not sure what I said about them. I think I glazed them probably, but we'll find out.
That they might have some improvement this year with a healthy Kyler Murray and a revamped wide receiver room with Marvin Harrison. Defense is pretty.
Marvin Harrison was okay in his rookie season. Wasn't as good as a lot of people thought he was going to be, but I think he's going to be all right there.
Bad, but it could be better. Their team as a whole isn't like all too crazy, but I don't see them having a bad year like they did last year.
Yeah, they were pretty much just a mid team at the end of the day.
7-10 is what I have them at, which could be.
7-10 is pretty close to what their actual record was. They went 8-9, so I think this was a really good pick here by me. I think I got everything pretty much spot on, besides Trey McBride doing really, really well. So I applaud myself with that pick.
A bit low, could be a bit high. Some people would take the Seahawks over them, which is fair. They're high.
Yeah, see, I even knew it with the Seahawks. So
Being at 10-7 for me makes sense if Marvin Harrison is like the best wide receiver in the game and Kyler Murray just goes off. 4-13 is more reasonable in my opinion, but it's what it is. Coming second in the division, I actually have the surprising pick of the 49ers.
I mean, looking at it now, it's not that surprising since the Rams did win the division.
Now, I do think this is probably going to be because of the recent drama with Brandon Ayuk, even though
it was more or less just the injuries in total. The Niners were really injured. Christian McCaffrey, Ayuk, Debo, just everyone was hurt the whole year.
Got him signed, but also because of the very tough schedule that they have and the competitive division that they have. Brock Purdy still should be pretty good. They are going to have to pay him after this offseason, which
we'll see on that. Brock Purdy was all right this year. Had a few problems, especially without all of his players. But he might get shipped off. We'll see. I think inevitably they will keep him, but you'll never know.
Could sway some games, possibly. Trent Williams just got paid, and Christian McCaffrey is pretty good for them. Defense is going to be about the same as it was last year.
It was more or less worse, to be honest.
They're just getting a little older, a little bit more smarter, more wisdom back there. But I do have them at 10-7 here.
Not a great pick, but how were you going to know the Niners were going to get that injured? I didn't even have them at the low end, though, so that's why I think this is not a great pick. They finished 6-11 on the year and came last in the division, so I do feel a bit embarrassed on this one, but there wasn't much I really could have done in this situation.
Which is definitely a lot lower than many people are probably giving them. I just have a feeling that they're going to have an off year this year, possibly, leading to them maybe having this second place finish. But they could very well go 14-3 as I have them for the high. I also have them at 8-9 in the low, which is not too far off of what I have them as, just because it doesn't seem as realistic for them.
Well, I guess it was more realistic, but there was nothing I could have done to predict the Niners to be that broken.
Coming in at first in the division, I do have the Los Angeles Rams.
Now, I'm surprised I actually got this one right in the video, because when I was looking at the Rams, I was thinking they were going to have a lot of problems this year since they lost Aaron Donald. But they actually ended up having a really good team, ended up winning a playoff game, too.
I do think they're going to be much improved as they were last year, seeing as they turned it up at the end of the year there. I do think they have a run at the division here. It's just mostly the Niners I feel that they have to compete against, even though the other two teams will be pretty well.
They were more or less competing with the Seahawks at the end of the year, but in the end it didn't really matter.
The Rams do have a very good wide receiver room with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Running back is Kyren Williams, who is really good. They also have Luke Corum, if they wanted to have him go in as well. I think that the Rams defense will be better this year. They also drafted two very good defensive pieces to replace Aaron Donald. But I think they're going to...
And those two defensive pieces, was Braden Fisk and Jared Verse, were really good. Verse might win an award at the end of the day, and Fisk was also very good. Their team is really young, and besides Stafford, they could make a run in the next few years.
Work out for them, and I see them going 10-7 with a 12-5 record.
I actually got this one right on the dot, so I'm pretty happy about this one.
As the high, and I think 7-10 as the low. The last division up is the NFC North. Coming in last in the division, I do have the Chicago Bears, even with the better team that they have.
Putting the Bears in fourth in division was really good. thinking by me. I just didn't think their team was going to have enough to make many wins occur, especially with them firing their head coach in the middle of the season. The Bears were the only team in the division that really disappointed. Caleb Williams had some good moments, especially against the Vikings, for example, but all in all, he really struggled. So we'll see what happens in the next year. He might get better.
Be improved as well. I just feel that all the expectations will make Caleb Williams have a worse year than he probably should have.
I was actually pretty spot on with that claim, so I even knew it before he was on the team.
I'm gonna give them a record of 7-10, same as they were last year.
They actually regressed and had a 5-12 record, so this doesn't look as great. But I knew the Bears were going to be last in the division, unlike other people thinking they were going to be higher up in the division.
I feel like second year Caleb Williams might be able to go off. A high of probably 11-6 is good for them. Caleb Williams could come in and be really good for them if that's what they need. I could also see them maybe as low as 6-11. I guess not too much difference, but I just have them so low already. It's just because of the expectations set on him.
It's pretty true, all in all. I should have probably lowered it a little bit more just in case, but I couldn't have known that he was going to be as bad as he was.
Coming in at third in the division, I do have the Minnesota Vikings.
Unfortunately, I did not get this one right. The Vikings ended up going second in the division over the Packers, but a lot of people didn't even see them getting even to the third seed, so I still think this isn't that horrible of a pick.
Lost Kirk Cousins and Danielle Hunter in the offseason. So two big pieces gone. Sam Darnold could be good in the offense, probably his best offense he's been in.
And Sam Darnold played very well. He had MVP almost like numbers. Unfortunately, had a collapse at the last two games of the season. So we'll see where he ends up at the end of the year. Because of those last two games, his chances probably went from 70% Vikings down to like 40% Vikings. So we'll see what happens with him over the offseason.
Do have a new run game with Aaron Jones under a very good O-line.
And Aaron Jones played very well for his age. And he might come back for another year for Minnesota, but he might also leave.
The offense is going to be really good with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and Hawkinson when he comes back from injury. Defense should be pretty good this year as well with their new additions of Dallas Turner, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Jonathan Grenard. Of course, all these players are very good for them.
Grenard, Ginkel were very good. Both made it to the Pro Bowl. Those are some A+ offseason moves. Dallas Turner, he didn't get to play much, but when he was in, he looked pretty good. We'll see what happens with him, though.
Also got Stephon Gilmore, hopefully to make their cornerback room better. Even though it's got a lot of loose players in it, I think it should be okay for the year. Many people are sleeping on the Vikings, but if Sam Darnold plays well, I see them going possibly 8-9 or 11-6.
Now this doesn't look great. 8-9. The Vikings went 14-3, which was very wild. Wasn't very expected. Nobody could have expected them to be that good. 8-9, not great. So I'm not very happy with this one, but there was nothing I really could have done other than start glazing the Vikings or something.
6 at the highest would be making the playoffs with that, which would be wild. But I could also see them as low as 5-12, maybe taking a reset year for J.J. McCarthy.
It kind of is still a reset year for the J.J. McCarthy, but we'll have to see what happens with Sam Darnold.
Coming in at second in the division, I do have the Green Bay Packers. They do have a very good young team upstarting there. They did add Josh Jacobs to their running back room.
Josh Jacobs was really good this year. He made the Packers offense actually functionable because he opened up the pass for Jordan Love.
Hopefully going to make them better there. They have very good wide receivers back there. Dontavian Wicks, Christian Watson, and Romeo Doubs. I think that's going to be very good for them. Jordan Love did have a very good year last year. I think he's going to improve again more.
He kind of played as well as he did last year as well. Had a few injuries. Looked bad in the playoffs, I felt. So we'll see what happens with Jordan Love. He hasn't really put his name up there with Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre yet.
This year, defense also did get better with a new coordinator. Got Xavier McKinney back there for the safety room. I do have them going 11-6 this year.
Got the record correct, just didn't get the placement in the division correct.
13-4 in the high, 7-10 if maybe Love doesn't do as good or gets hurt this year. Seems reasonable to me. And for the last team of this division and this video, I do have the Detroit Lions.
I got the Lions pretty much perfectly correct besides the record. The Lions were almost unstoppable on both sides of the ball. Just got too injury prone at the end of the year. Probably going to make a run at the playoffs again next year.
They do have a very good team this year. Great offense, improved defense, great coordinator. All around very good team. The only problem is they have a tough schedule and they haven't really been good in a while. So maybe a different change of pace could affect them. But I do have them finishing with the best record in the NFL at 13-4.
Yeah, they basically finished with the best record in the NFL. About the same as Chiefs. 15-2 at the high is actually correct for them. 13-4 is what I had for them. It was a pretty good take by me, and I think I did pretty good on the teams in this video. All in all.
I could also see them going 15-2 at most if they're really, really good. But if things don't work out or if players just get hurt, I see them going 9-8 this
I mean, players did get hurt and things happened, and yet they still won 15 games.
year. That was my record predictions for all the NFL teams for this upcoming season. But now, what's my view on the playoffs for this year?
So right now, currently, as I am filming this segment of the video, the playoffs have reached the Super Bowl, which is the Chiefs and the Eagles. Looking at this graph, just from left to right, down up, the Packers did not win a playoff game. The Lions did not win a playoff game. The Cowboys were not in the playoffs, as well as the Niners. Eagles were pretty much correct, besides there on the left. Rams as well with a win. On the right side, I have the Dolphins, the Titans, and the Bengals in there, so it was all screwed up, basically. Although I did have the Chiefs going all the way to the Super Bowl, so we'll see if that pans out for the win. But that was pretty good. The Texans at the top, though, wasn't really the greatest choice. They didn't really do all much, but they did win one playoff game, so I guess it isn't the worst take in the world. I should have had the Bills winning a playoff game, though. That's where I think I really struggled.
The last thing I will address in this video is the award winners for the...
Now, for the award winners, I don't remember who I picked. I think I have maybe one or two right on here. I think I remember Jaden Daniels as my Offensive Rookie of the Year, which is looking great as of now. Well, so let's find out.
Season. My Comeback Player of the Year award will go to Sam Darnold.
Now, I'm not really sure if you can call it a Comeback Player award, since he really didn't come back from much. But he is in the polls to be the Comeback Player of the Year, so we'll see what happens there. I think Sam Darnold played really good this year. He did come back from being bad, I guess you could say, but still. I don't know if he really deserves this award.
I believe he is in a very good situation in Minnesota, and I believe he could have a very good year, and he hasn't particularly been good. And I also don't think there's many other candidates to pick from, seeing as Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins I have not doing so well this year. Next is my Offensive Player of the Year. I have CeeDee Lamb winning off.
If CeeDee Lamb didn't get injured, he could have possibly been the Offensive Player of the Year. It's looking like it's going to be Jamar Chase or Saquon Barkley this year. CeeDee Lamb still had a pretty good year. We'll see with him in the following years with the quarterback situation.
Offensive Player of the Year. There is no other good receiving options in Dallas, So I believe CD is going to get all of the workload from Dak Prescott, who also has a terrible running room behind him. So they're going to be passing a lot. Next is my Defensive Player of the Year. My Defensive Player of the Year is going to be Max Crosby.
Now, this pick isn't that great. I don't think he's going to win the award. He's probably not even in the polls to win. It's probably going to go to a player more likely TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, or Pat Surtain.
He and Christian Wilkins are going to be some of Max Crosby's would-be defenders. Of course, after we did the Offensive and Defensive Players of the Year, now I'll do the Defensive and Offensive Players that are Rookies for the year. My choice for Defensive Rookie of the Year is Byron Murphy.
Yeah, Byron Murphy, he wasn't doing too great. I don't think he is he's not in the polls. But more likely candidate for Defensive Player of the Year is probably going to be Jared Verse or something of that nature. But Byron Murphy, not the greatest pick for an award winner here.
Byron Murphy has a Jaden Daniels.
Now, Jaden Daniels for my Offensive Rookie of the Year. Didn't really say it in the video, but yeah, Jaden Daniels probably going to win the award. He really ran away with the show at the end of the year, especially beating the Lions in the playoffs. So, yeah, he's looking to be a force for nature, or force of the NFL upcoming in the next few years.
I think in Washington he has a great chance of being really good this year. The year winner is going to be Brian Callahan from the Tennessee Titans.
So, Coach of the Year award here, Brian Callahan, yeah, the Titans were not great this year. I thought their pieces were going to mesh well. I thought he was going to do something good. Probably not going to work out here. More likely candidates include Sean Payton, Kevin O'Connell, possibly Dan Quinn, Dan Campbell. Those are probably more likely subjects here.
I believe they assembled a really great roster, and the record that I got for them shows why he should be a good coach. And finally, the last award for MVP I pick will go to Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions.
Jared Goff did have a really good year this year, but he didn't have a MVP-like season. This award's probably going to Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen for the award, but Jared Goff still had a great season. Just the other guys played better.
I know this sounds like a weird answer. They had the best record in the NFL in this scenario that I picked, so that means he should probably be the MVP then, right? Alright, this is the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. Comment down below what you think of my takes, and we'll see you guys at the end of the season to review what I did.
Alright, everyone. Thank you for watching this video. That was me reacting to my takes at the start of the NFL season. Had a lot right, had a lot wrong. It was fun. Probably going to do it again. But that's the end of this video. Thank you all for watching, and peace.